Hello, everyone, and welcome to my new channel, Financial Strength. In this channel, we'll go over current events in business, news, finance, as well as financial analysis over different companies on different stock exchanges using different financial models, such as a sensitivity analysis, financial ratios, and other financial models used by the industry. But without further ado, Let's dive into this article, review, and I'll explain why I think it's wrong. So, the title of this article is called Millions of People Quit Their Jobs in the Great Resignation. Here is Why It May Not Last Long, over on MSN or CNBC. The key points of this article say over the past several months, a rapidly growing number of Americans left their jobs, more than 4.4 million alone in September. The move has become known as the Great Resignation, but the picture is more complicated. It all adds up to a jobs market in which people leaving their position is driven more by temporary COVID concerns than a general strike. And right now, I'm calling this malarkey on this last point right here. But let's delve further into this article, and then we can kind of go over my issues and my what I think is really going on. So the report starts off by saying reports of the so-called Great Resignation may have been exaggerated. Over the past several months, a rapidly growing number of Americans left their jobs, more than 4.4 million in September, the most recent month for which data is available. During that time, much of the narrative has focused on burned out employees stomping out of their jobs, the big quit, as some have put it, in which workers are demanding higher wages, better working condition, and more mobility. While worker dissatisfaction is an obvious factor behind quits whenever they occur, there has been an increased focus lately on how employers can find incentives to keep workers from leaving. However, the issue has become complicated and likely clouded by the pandemic. Economists at Barclays have a different theory. They say the trend is less about resignation than it is about hesitation. Worries over COVID related factors that likely will subside in the days ahead. Okay. Many still out of the workforce. Moreover, the same Labor Department data set that indicates workers quitting in record numbers also shows hiring progressing at a brisk pace, nearly 6.5 million in September, more than 2 million more than those who quit. Though the pace of hires has cooled off a bit from the summer, it is moving at a level that is easily would have been a record prior to the pandemic. At the same time, the rate of layoffs has remained consistent for most of this year, reflected in the weekly jobless claims that have been in range recently and approaching where they were before the pandemic hit. It all adds up to a jobs market in which people leaving their positions is driven more by temporary COVID concerns than a general strike, as some have suggested. We believe that this resignation dynamic is mostly a symptom of other underlying factors that are affecting labor market participation rather than a cause. Barclays Deputy Chief U.S. Economist Jonathan Miller and others wrote in a lengthy analysis. Indeed, the high quit rate is a red herring for understanding the sluggish return of workers to the U.S. labor market following the COVID-19 pandemic, in our view. Miller wrote, instead, the true cause is a hesitation of workers to return to the labor force due to influences tied to the pandemic, such as infection risk, infection related illness, and lack of affordable childcare. Okay. That paints quite a different picture than of a great resignation in which disgruntled workers are simply leaving their jobs in droves. Still, the issue of declining workforce is important to understand and is vexing policymakers at the Federal Reserve and elsewhere. The labor force participation rate, a measure of those working or seeking work against the total population of a working age, is 61.6%, 1.7 percentage points below its pre pandemic level. That represents a decline of just under 3 million since February 2020. Fed officials have said they won't start raising interest rates until the labor market gets near its pre pandemic levels and seen a normalization of the participation that would be part of the equation. The size of the labor force is about 1.4 million larger than at the beginning of 2021. It's still not where policymakers would like. Citing Labor Department and other data, Barclays said that decline in labor force participation is being fed almost exclusively by married people living with a spouse who left the labor force in the late summer 2020 and did not return. This general profile itself gives us reason to believe that many of the missing workers will gradually transition back to work, the firm said. This is supported by survey evidence from others suggesting that COVID related considerations such as infection risk, illness, pandemic income supports, and remain important contributors on an ongoing participation hesitancy. Oh, so it's because of COVID concerns is why people don't want to come back. Maybe it's not the fact that their employer isn't flexible, or maybe because they've kind of had a shifting priorities. But hey, according to this article, it's because it's COVID-19, not because you know employers aren't really flexible and people need that. Anyway, let me continue. Where the quits are, the numbers also show a jobs market that's becoming increasingly dynamic. About half of all quits this year have come from leisure and hospitality, an industry under intense pressure from the virus and associated restrictions and fears that have limited dining and drinking out. However, about a fifth of those quits also have come from a professional and business services, acquiring the data track research. With many of these moves coming from upper levels, including CEOs, the trend is likely a positive sign for the labor market, Data Track co founder Jessica Raby wrote in a recent report. The quit rate is traditionally a measure of economic confidence, as workers typically voluntarily leave their current roles after accepting a better offer, Raby wrote. The churn in this industry, along with the overall high level of quits, puts an upward pressure on wages, help consumer spending standpoint amid strong inflationary backwinds. Indeed, wages have been in a sharp upswing lately, rising 4.9% year over year in October. That's seen a growing evidence of an empowered workforce able to fetch higher pay. However, there's a dark side, and difficulty finding workers might force job owners to turn to more automation and lock people out of those jobs. So that's the second approach that they said is wrong. Anyway, just go back up here. So the first reason why they say that they don't think the Great Resignation is going on is because it's all about people having COVID related concerns, and that's why they don't want to come back in. I think that's false. I think basically what it is that people realize that there's more important things in this life than just working all day every day and being a slave. And not to mention too, a lot of people need flexibility from their employers, and a lot of employers don't want to give that kind of flexibility because they need to understand, things come up, whether it's personal or stuff with their family or maybe something with their kids going on, and it's just hard for them to kind of focus on work when they got all this other stuff taken care of. So honestly, I think that's the reason why people have been quitting their jobs, because they realize the pay stinks. Who wants to dedicate their life to somebody else's job, building somebody else's dream? Then on top of that too, when it comes time that you need something, whether it's time off or you need to go to a doctor's appointment or something urgent comes up, some employers don't like that, don't like being flexible like that. Or some employers now, during the pandemic, a lot of employers were forced to go to remote work. Now, since things were calming down a little bit before Omicron came, um, employees were expecting people to go back full time. I mean, I remember interviewing in early 2021, earlier this year, for a couple positions. And they're like, "Yeah, we expect all our workers to come back 5 days a week." And I'm thinking to myself, "No, I'm not doing that. The days of me being stuck in traffic and stuck inside an office and waking up at 5 a.m. or whatever just to get to work, just when you get home at like 6 or 7 at night, those days are over with. If I can work from home, where I can just log in at 8 or 9, and then I can log off at 5 o'clock, and then there's no traveling. I'm just stuck at home. That's a lot better. It's a lot easier for people, but some employees aren't flexible like that. And I think that's the main reason why people are quitting the jobs, because lack of flexibility, pay. But I think the most important thing is just that lack of flexibility from their employers, right? And then too, this article was talking about automation taking over. Well, there's always been a threat of automation. Automation's been coming up all the way, so the automation is coming whether people like it or not. I just hope it doesn't have a profound effect on the workforce, but we'll see what happens. Otherwise, that's just my 2 cents on this article. I hope you enjoyed it. This is, like I said, this is my very first ever video. Might not be perfect, but hey, work in progress, right? Anyway, please leave a comment on anything that you thought was interesting that I said, or maybe something I missed. Anyway, hope you have a good rest of the day. Take care.